What's up, everybody? My name is Honorable, your host and founder, and we are back again with another episode of the Space Time Podcast where we highlight innovation, design thinking, anything tech related, and we have a special guest today. His name is Devin Devlin. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Devin Devlin. A little bit about myself is right now I'm a product manager at Microsoft. I work on Excel. A little bit about my background, how me and Honorable even met is went to school down at the University of San Diego, studied electrical engineering there. I'm happy to see Honorable too doing that same route as well. And through my time there, did many different startups, still in that type of mindset as well, even though I am at a big company too, just learning how things work at scale right now. And it's been a great time. So a little bit about me.
Absolutely. I always forget that you are an electrical engineer, and then I always ask you for feedback about different classes and teachers. So, it's great.
I do
Um,
0% of electrical engineering now. So I think
no,
that's
for
how a lot of people are.
No, for sure. It's funny because a lot of people ask me, about product management, and people say well, what about electrical engineering? I'm like, you know, it's a communication. At least we can talk technical when we need to get there.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's get into it. So you are product manager at Microsoft. So you've obviously, I saw on your LinkedIn that you interned at Microsoft for 2 years, also doing product management. And then I wanted to actually kind of talk about that later. I want to talk about your startup that you were doing at University of San Diego. And you also were using ChatGPT before it became ChatGPT. So can you talk to us about the startup and exactly what you were doing?
Yeah, so we were building a mental health chatbot for underrepresented groups. So this is before the time when ChatGPT got
Yeah.
huge and blew up and everything. This
Yep.
was back when everyone called like NLP. Obviously, it's
Hmm.
still called that too,
Yeah.
instead of LLMs and other things of that nature. So for senior design, um, for our senior basically last project, you got to do some for a whole year. And for the
Yeah.
project, we were looking at what are things in the industry that we can learn now and try to implement that's going to have a big impact. So we understood that AI was going to be revolutionary a whole year to really dive into this space.
Hmm.
It's really hard though at the end of the day to build your own like ChatGPT because we know how much money it
Yeah.
costs. So
Yeah.
we were able to utilize a whole bunch of different resources, do some fine tuning of some different models as well to be able
Hmm.
to prototype our own type of ChatGPT model. But it was a lot of just scrappy work that we were doing with me and a few of my friends as well. Oh, the reason why it was scrappy too is because I remember even talking to professors when we were down at USD. I was like, "Hey, we're trying to do a project in NLP,"
Yeah.
and their first question was, "What is NLP?" And I was like, "Oh, that's okay. I guess we're gonna
Yeah.
have to be doing all the learning ourselves and
Right.
using Google." So that was my first, I would say, like big introduction and learning into AI and get into that
Hmm.
space, and something I'm very like passionate even in now, as I know it's really revolutionizing the industry right now as we see Microsoft is really big into that space now
We're gonna
and
get there. We're gonna talk about that.
everybody is going there.
Yeah. No, 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 for sure. So then, obviously, I also looked. I'm getting going back to LinkedIn. So you played football at USD, right? You're also from the Bay, and you made it. You decided to become an electrical engineer, and then obviously became the vice president, excuse me, the president of NSBE, which is National Society of Black Engineers, right? So that's kind of like a very, not super conventional pathway into where you are now working with Microsoft. So can you first explain to me a little bit on why you chose electrical engineering, more specifically? Why you chose to do an AI product, which was ChatGPT for senior capstone or your senior design product.
Yeah, so I think this goes back to the whole thing of yes, I did electrical engineering, but there's a reason why I do a 0% of electrical engineering today.
Yeah.
So how I got even into, I would say like engineering from the base of it is my story behind that was before I even started college, I didn't really have a background or I didn't have people around me that was like, oh, who were engineers or role models into that. It was more
Right.
like where I come from too, like coming from the Bay, a lot of people's like, how do you make it? Stu is like, oh, you're gonna go
Yeah.
play ball, you're gonna rap, you're gonna do something like that. No one's really becoming engineers. You know about the typical roles of like doctors, but
Yeah.
engineering wasn't around. But I
Right.
always knew in my life that I love technology. So I remember my first intro 101 class. of engineering at
Yeah.
USD, and I was like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do, be able to build technology for the rest of my life, you know? So I was
Yeah.
like, that's exactly what I've been wanting to do based my whole life. And why did I choose electrical engineering? I would have chose computer engineering if they offered it at USD, but at
Right.
USD the closest thing to it was electrical engineering, and people said that it was really challenging. I was like, oh, and the hardest one, so I was like, oh, might
Yeah.
as well do that. So I want something
Right.
challenging, hard. It's the closest thing computer engineering, and I'm really happy I did it. I learned a lot
Right.
and was able to get a lot of learning aspects and things out of it. Um, did I answer all your
No, no,
questions?
yeah, that's great. No,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And then obviously, so then going back to it, right? So, electrical engineering, and then you became the president of NSBE, which stands for National Society of Black Engineers. Walk me through that process, right? So, tell me about how you being the president of a chapter, being able to for the viewers who don't know, National Society of Black Engineers is an organization that essentially makes up, I think, it's about 40,000 or 20,000 Black engineers across the world, but mainly in the United States. And every year we have two conferences: a regional conference and a national conference, where all schools come together and network, meet other people, can have opportunities to advance their career with jobs, internships, etc. So talk to me about the leadership, that you've kind of were able to display leading a chapter like USD, and what did you get out of it, and how did you make an impact on other people?
Yeah, so a couple things with that too. One thing I want to add on to NISB as well, it's the biggest organization for college students, especially
Yeah,
to be able to find that group of people that are like you. So for me, one of the biggest reasons too, going back to why I even joined NSB as well, was being at USD, a predominantly white university or historically white university.
yeah,
In my electrical engineering classes and in my year of graduating, basically what it is 2 years you're in a class with about 40, 50 people, and you're going to be taking all your major electrical engineering classes together. And for me, I was the only person of color there. um, so that was like, okay, I don't really see too many people that look like myself, that I'm along with. So Nesby gave me that opportunity to have that community of people that I would say that look like myself, going through some of the same struggles that I have gone through in my life or even currently going through, that I was able to connect with. So that was one of the big things there. And now going into like my role inside Nesby as well. So I first started out, I always knew I wanted to be on the executive board. So starting out sophomore year, I was the financial chair. And then in my junior year, I decided actually to not even I decided to be the vice president, but along with that too, I also decided to take a regional position as well.
oh wow,
So I was on the regional executive board as a SoCal chapter chair. So in that role, that had a lot of different responsibilities. One of the biggest responsibilities there is like, you're basically the regional chair for all the different schools in SoCal for their NESB chapters, going from USC to UCLA to UCSD. And through that role, that really taught me about leadership and how you can't just do anything yourself, and it operates just like a business as well, of how do you get other people motivated and to all follow that same common vision and building out that community, that culture. That was one big thing. And then for my last year, I had two different options of, hey, it was, do I go be the regional chapter president, so in
right,
charge of all the different chapters in region 6 that makes up, I think, maybe about 13 states,
right,
or do I go be the president at USD?
hmm,
And one thing that I saw that too in my last year is that there was a lot of people that wanted to be on the executive board, but no one wanted to step up and be the president for our
right,
chapter. So I was like, I can't go do something in a bigger picture if I can't help out my local place where I'm at right now. So that's why I decided to, hey, I'm going to go be the president and go help out our local chapter and make sure that it still does great, still has, because I remember we won small chapter of the year award. We won
yeah,
medium chapter of the year when I was there as well. So it's like, how do we continue doing this as well? So um, basically, though, going back to your question as well, is what are things I learned? One of the biggest things is leadership. communication, big thing, working cross-functionally with different types of people, different styles too as well, working with different leaders in the school because and companies, because there's like, hey, we want to go to this conference that you're talking about, we have to fund it too. So how do we get the funding? We're going to be
Got
talking to other
base.
people. We were lucky enough. We had a great accountant too that helped us with our finances and did everything with that with the school
Right.
too. Working obviously with advisors and other things, but really just taught me that leadership skill, communication, working with others, and how do you like, I wouldn't say own, but like how do you like own it? Like I own a like product now, but how do you continue to do that? So
No, no,
those are
for
the main
sure.
skills it taught me.
And that's great. And then so I saw that you worked at Microsoft, 2 years as an internship before what you're doing now. So did you find your position at Nesby, the Microsoft position, or did you like how did that end up coming around?
Man, that's a great question. So I didn't find it
Yeah.
particularly at Nesby. What happened was our advisor for Nesby sent an email saying, hey, we want everyone to apply for the Nesby conference. And I was like, oh, perfect. I was like, oh, yeah, I'll apply to Microsoft. That sounds like a
Yeah.
really cool opportunity. But I probably shouldn't say this on the podcast, but I will. Is I was never I love Microsoft. Like I wasn't one of those people coming in, but
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be honest. Like obviously love Microsoft products now. I was always an
Yeah,
Apple guy growing up,
yeah. Same.
but
Yeah, yeah.
but Microsoft does have its good products. Is like there's different things that didn't even know that they owned until even
Yeah.
coming here,
We won't
like
get
that
in
I
that.
use
We'll get to
every day.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, no,
Um,
for sure.
but so then the year that I was doing it, they didn't have the conference. So then I had to do all my interviews remote and
Hmm.
everything. So it was tied to Nesby. Like I had Nesby Connects there at Microsoft. And when
Right.
I was on the regional board, my um, advisor, or you can say my mentor, worked at Microsoft too. So that I think
Oh,
helped the
okay.
process
Very
as
nice.
well.
Yeah.
So just understanding their culture. So then from there, I was able to, did one internship and then did another one the year after. They were both remote. So I didn't get, obviously got some swag or some gifts that they give, but was
Right.
not spoiled like the interns that are in person that come in now.
No, for sure. And then can you just like briefly just talk about what we were actually working on when you were the product manager, excuse me, program manager intern both times when you were at Microsoft? Like what were you working on? What was your maybe not your day to day per se, but what were you developing?
Yeah, so I was a product manager for two different things. So my first internship, uh, just going back to, they were both on Excel. So the
Okay,
first one
cool.
was for a feature called Sheet View in Excel. The other one was my second internship was an AI product of how do you make data more readable by automatically um, using some type of intelligence or some type of way to be able to make data more readable and easier for users to use.
Very nice. Okay, cool. So let's get into it. ChatGPT, right, gets what, $20 billion from Microsoft? Is that the number? What's the number? What's the exact number?
I think they got it. It was no, it was like 10 billion.
10 billion. Okay, so they get
Yeah,
$10 billion from Microsoft, right, as an investment to some people say they got acquired, but it's more of an investment, right, that allowed them to scale, right? So how did this did this shock you? You obviously have a new CEO, relatively new, who's doing like a fantastic job in my opinion. Did this shock you guys? Like what happened internally? How did some of your processes change? How did some of your day-to-day change? Like walk me through that experience.
I would say one of the big things with acquiring them and just AI in general is just the
Yeah.
wave of excitement throughout the company, too, as well as like
Yeah.
one thing to bring it back to is as well with this AI. We knew that this was going to be a big thing. We just didn't know when. Like Microsoft and I've heard since like 2016, Satya was like, we need to get the best people in the world in AI, and that's
True.
back way before ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Uh, and when ChatGPT 4, it was like, we need AI and everything because this is really going to be able to help productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, one thing that has changed at Microsoft is just the speed of everything. Of hey,
Right.
we need to get this done fast. Customers really want this. This
Right.
can make us a lot more in revenue as well. So that has just been the biggest thing of hey, usually projects at Microsoft, like you'll be like, hey, this is going to take 6 months to do today. Now leadership's like, no, we have a month.
Yeah. No,
Like
facts.
figure
Yeah.
out figure out like how we can do this because customers want this, and we really need to release this.
No, for sure. And then, so before we get to the next point, you just said customers want this, right? And I think that's something that's so important because a lot of these companies, people kind of look at them as kind of just being, like I do what I want, which is very true, right? But at the same time, there is still a level of, customer experience and human-centric feedback that you guys actually have to get to actually make, certain decisions and develop new products. So can you please walk me through the process on not only necessarily like talking to new customers, but how do you acquire new customers for feedback for new products? How does that work?
So yeah, customers are our number one thing that we always do. We have so many different feedbacks loops of
Yeah.
how we talk to customers as a PM too.
Hmm.
So some of the different things is like, hey, we have an idea. We're gonna go talk to users. We have different things or different vendors that we talk to that set us up
Right.
with customers that we can go talk through prototypes. We also have internal tools. So if you're on, for example, any Office product or basically any Microsoft product, there's a feedback tool. We can see, hey, are we seeing a high thing of feedback coming from somewhere? We also have internal tools to say, hey, feedback has spiked this month in this area. Hey, we need to go look at this.
Right.
Uh, we have we have things called Excel MVPs. So these are basically like Instagram influencers that post about Excel, and they're
Oh,
like our
nice.
MVP group, and we can show them, hey, these are different things we're thinking about building. How do you guys think? We also have to, like every other company too, is we also have feature rollouts. Feature is just going, hey, we're just going to ship this out to everyone. We first have to test it out internally. We
Yeah.
give it to everyone in the company, and then we have them test it out. If we get any feedback from them executives, okay, we're going to go fix it. That's another thing of feedback as well. We also have our like insider program. Same thing. We're going to get feedback from them before we actually release it to the general public. Of hey, now we're going from, let's say, just throwing out numbers. Let's say we're going from like 1 million to then we're going to skyrocket it all the way to 100 million,
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. And that's great. So I think that's really important. I think that kind of segues us into our next topic about you working on Excel and then with Python because that was all over my LinkedIn. Like I'm not a developer and I don't know too much about, Python. I mean, even though I know I can do a little bit, but walk me through that. Like what exactly did that mean, for not only really Excel as Microsoft, but what did that mean for Python to be able to integrate so well with Excel and, to the average user who knows nothing about software development, please tell us what that means.
Yeah. So for the average person, like we know that in terms of programming languages too,
Yeah.
some people say Excel is the biggest programming language in the world.
Yeah.
Because
True.
you can kind of program it. You can do it using
Yeah.
like VBA macros, writing formulas. Some people call that
Yeah.
programming. But then the other biggest thing that people use in the analytical world is Python.
True.
So then they were like, if we're able to integrate both of them together. So now, because what a lot of people will do is they'll be in Python and then they want to analyze the data, they'll go to Excel. Then they'll go back to Python and they'll keep
Right.
mix matching. And we're like, why can't it just all be in one place?
True.
So
Very
that is
true.
one of the biggest things that has been, we've seen a lot of love from it. Our
Yeah.
most ever viewed and commented post that we posted. So that's
Yeah.
another big thing and big excitement that's going around as well.
Right.
Everyone wants to use it. A lot of people have reached out to me even saying, hey, can you do demos at our company as well, like of how
Right.
to use it? Personally, myself, like I don't work on that team personally, but
Right.
like going back to the whole thing of I know people who, yeah, I work with all the people that work on
No,
that
no,
space as well.
no, no, for sure. And then, okay, so then let's talk about it, right? So, in the next 5 years, right? So obviously you worked on Excel. You're working at Microsoft as a PM. What kind of Microsoft products would you see yourself working on in the future? I think it could be an opportunity for you to use your EE background. You could be on HoloLens. You could be on like some kind of new augmented reality. You see the Apple Vision Pro launch their headset. Like, what kind of products are you looking that you think that you could that you work on in the future?
Man, that's a good question. Right now, I would say I love Excel just because in terms of like the culture, and
Yeah.
I don't see myself leaving this area of Microsoft for a while. But I know everyone around me, every 2 to 3 years, they switch either a role inside Excel, they either switch somewhere else.
Right.
And for myself in particular, too, one thing I've heard too, talking to executive on Azure, he said he's like when layoffs happen, everything and kind of the flow of things, he's like one thing to always just know about is follow where the money is. So you can look at like
Yeah.
Office and Azure.
Yeah.
So I would say if I'm not inside Office, I'd probably go to Azure.
Right.
And there I could use potentially some of my EE background too, but I
Yeah.
really see myself sticking in software. It goes back to even what we were talking about before of, hey, why did I do an AI or NLP type project for my senior design? It's
Right.
because when I was in college getting my EE degree, that's when I realized that I really love software a lot in terms of
Right.
developing, thinking about what's best for the user more than hardware as well. As I got down to the day to day of hardware, I was like, that's really not for me. But software is something that I was like, it can scale and you can impact 10 million users just by one change. And you can do
Right.
that
No, for sure.
instantly instead of having somebody have to physically get your thing. I know that's
Right.
some people like, that physical aspect of things, but for me,
Yeah.
I have, yeah, really imaginary mind to it and just seeing that visual of a lot of people being able to use them at once and how scalable it is has been something that I always loved. So I got into like the startup life in college, just working on
Yeah.
software stuff. So that's why I continued it, and that's why I'm still still working in software now.
Yeah. No, no, for sure. Okay. So if you were to talk about, Microsoft as a whole, especially in comparison to, let's say, a company like Apple or even like Google for that sake, right? Where, Microsoft, I would say they kind of have a lot of different products that they're working on, and like people just don't know. Like, for example, I didn't know that Microsoft owned GitHub, right? And that's like a number one like developer tool that's like used, right? So can you talk about that? It's like how does it work internally? Is it that every single team essentially gets allocated to different projects, or let's say if you acquire a company like GitHub, that they just essentially have different management? Like if you wanted to even go to an Azure or a GitHub, what would that process even be like, and what would you even work on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think first is like Microsoft has many different products.
Yeah.
So with those different products, there's different teams and different teams like, hey, I work on Excel. There's also Word, but then there's also shared teams. There's a whole bunch of different things that and different people that work there too. So it's like, hey, you might make one change here, but this is affecting like, oh, this is because of Bing. Oh, we own Bing too. Okay, so we got to go talk to the
Right.
Bing team now.
Yeah. Got it. Got
or
it.
we own Edge. So there's things like that.
Right.
But when we acquire a company, it depends.
Right.
So like LinkedIn, for example, we when
Yo,
we
yeah,
bought
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah,
I
when
forgot
they
about
bought
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah, when they bought LinkedIn, it's all based on the contract of how it wants. LinkedIn's looked at as a whole separate entity to Microsoft right now.
Yeah.
So they still have a CEO or leader, you could say, I guess, but they all report to obviously Satya, our CEO,
Right.
but they're their own team and own group and
Got it.
everything. But other teams, like, yeah, they're still like a GitHub team. I'm not so connected with them as much, but I'll let you know it's not like um, it's when we acquire them, it's more like, hey, we're acquiring you because we know you guys are ready in a well established business too.
Yeah.
Yes, we can help improve it, but we're not
Hmm.
trying to just integrate as much as possible. Well, we do
Right.
obviously do integrate, like we use Git and everything too. So
Right. No, for sure. So one thing I do like
yeah,
about Microsoft too is I like how everything is pretty open, like open source, right? Because like if you go to Microsoft right now and you're to like learn any type of programming language, you can go on like what do you know Scott Hanselman by any chance?
I've heard of him. Yes.
Okay, yeah, so he's like
Yeah, yeah,
I met him a couple of years ago, but he's a Microsoft employee, and he pretty much like does all like pretty much all the like C Excel sheets, or excuse me, the curriculum about how to teach people like C in different ways to use some of the Microsoft libraries, and I think that's something that I really appreciate about Microsoft. And that other companies don't. Like for example, like there's no one really on Apple that's teaching you about how to use Swift UI or how to use Swift or Xcode. Even though Xcode is like terrible to me, you know. Or there's no one really at like Google. I guess like Google does a little bit, but like even Google, like they even have like say with Java, whatever it is that they're working on. I don't think they're as transparent about that. So yeah, so I mean I think that's great. So I guess like can you please give our viewers your day to day working? I guess like are you hybrid, remote at Microsoft? So, like people who are looking for a PM role, people that want to apply for something. What is your day to day look like on like say average Tuesday?
yeah, yeah. That's a great question. So first of all, too, right now I live out in Bellevue, so that Microsoft, of course, Redmond. I live Bellevue and Redmond are right next to each other. I literally live
Yeah.
7 minutes away from campus. I used to live in Seattle, but I did the move over here, cut down
Nice.
my commute time. So
Right.
yes, I do go into the office right now. I try to go. So I'm always traveling or going back home for like a month at a time. So when I
Yeah.
am out here at home, I do try to go into the office as much as possible. So I try to go in probably anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week.
Got it.
But the other days work remote. I should also say as well, half the team on Excel works remote. And we
Right.
also have to work with, like, we have other teams as well. So we have a team in like India, we have a team in Israel, we have teams in Atlanta, Ireland. We have teams
All
all
over.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, so you can work remote. There's a lot of people that work remote. There's people that live in Seattle and just don't go to the office and work remote. So it
Yeah.
kind of just depends on how you are. But being early in my career and building connections have been something really important to me, and I really have seen how much it has helped me grow and make an impact. So I, yeah, love to be able to do that, and I get energy being around other people. So
Right.
that's how I am too.
So
And
then
then I was just gonna say about my day
yeah.
to day now too
Yeah.
as well is, so usually, yeah, going PMs too compared to like devs too is you have a
Yeah.
lot of meetings.
Yeah.
like like you talk to devs, they're like, man, I could never be a PM because you look on our calendar, we just have meetings all the time. And
Right.
I don't mind it either, but
Yeah.
it goes around a lot of different things too, of like what a day-to-day kind of looks like, kind of varies day-to-day as you're doing. You have so many different hats as a PM. That's why they say like a lot of like founders or people like that make good PMs, because you're
Yeah.
wearing so many different hats. It's from one day it could be, hey, I got to go make a PM design and then work with design on this idea. Another day
Right.
is you're making a PowerPoint uh, to present a feature or something new that you're trying to do and trying to maybe even persuade others. Another day you're talking to customers. Another day, you're always talking with engineers, and you
Yeah.
might have to be doing all these things in the same day too. You're, yeah, just wearing many different hats, talking to many different people, trying to make sure everything's aligned, because at the end of the day you own some type of feature that you're trying to ship. And what are all the different things that you're going to think about when you ship? You're going to think about engineers, design, content writers, to
Right.
users, researchers, to data scientists. Like, you're working with all these different people, and you're kind of like glue as that, as the PM.
Right. So then, can you? So then, and thank you for telling me about that as well. So I want to ask you another question around that as well. How do you get things done? Right. Because obviously you have so many meetings, you have so many teams that are relying on you. Right. So like obviously coming from a startup background, usually if you want to get something done, it's just you, maybe a co-founder, maybe a couple other people, and then you get it done. So when you have teams in Atlanta, teams in Israel, when you have teams, and I guess like in San Francisco, wherever it may be, how are you guys actually like coming up together and saying, okay, this is our deadline, let's shoot forward? How does that process work? How do you guys combat speed as well?
Yeah, yeah. So that's good. I think one thing to answer this, like, how do I stay organized? Personally, I like Trello or like Planner, like just
Yeah,
write down all my different tasks and just knock them out, just start getting
right,
them done, and kind of scheduling out my week of like, hey, what am I trying to get done? And trying to
right,
think about in the long term, what is the vision that I'm thinking about that's going to make the most impact, not even for me, but my manager, and what is my skip manager? What's my, my manager's manager? What type of impact can I make that they want to see, instead of just
right,
saying like, because there's always a lot of work to do, but it's like, what is the most impactful work that you could really do? And that's what I try to focus on every single day, of how can I make the biggest impact. And going along too, of like, how do we work together too as well, is, yeah, like our team, like we have weekly team meetings, but at the end
hmm
of the day, like, how do we communicate? Like, we have different channels, like we talk to, like we use Teams, so we have different channels of how we communicate what work's going on. We have obviously emails that people send, but then also too, we're going to be setting up meetings with each other too. If they're like, hey, we're working the same scope, hey, we need to meet, we need to talk about
right,
this, I want to get your feedback, or we're messaging them. And I feel like those are all like pretty good things to do, and I feel like there's always ways to improve team communication, but I really think of just staying constant at it really makes it good in terms of speed too as well, of how do you move the fastest, and how do you make sure we're not doing like repetitive tasks as like another team. um, and yeah.
right. Okay, so if there was somebody that's looking for an opportunity at Microsoft, right, and they want to pretty much know how they can get involved, and what would you tell them, right? So is it like more like a resume thing? Is it more of a networking thing? I know everything kind of comes together, but what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's looking for, even a PM role at Microsoft or development role, whatever they may be?
Yeah. For the general picture, like I think there's the way that I look at it is there's different steps in the process. So there's one step of, hey, you have to have a good resume because that's the first test. It's going to go
Hmm.
through some system that has to pass through. So that's the first thing. The next thing then is like the interview process. And
Right.
there's a couple steps in it. There's like the behavioral side. It doesn't matter if you're a dev, it doesn't matter if you're a PM. The behavioral questions are going to be there. So making sure that if you're early in your career, really knowing what's on your resume. What I like to do is like just write down, here's exactly what I would say in the interview
Right.
with my resume to explain everything. And then from there is if you're a PM or dev, you have some technical side of things. So if you're dev, you're gonna have some type of coding. So yeah, obviously you got to be on Leak Code, you got to be on HackerRank a lot. If
Yeah.
you are a PM, you got the sides of design questions. I think that's a huge one where they ask you, what's your favorite product? How would you improve it? And then go deep into that for probably another 30 minutes or so to say, how do you think through a feature lifecycle as
Right.
well? So that's one of the
I
biggest
see.
things. But I would say, like trying to apply at Microsoft, I would say one of the biggest things too is you don't have to know everything, but
Hmm.
just your willingness and your fit for the culture. Like, do you have a growth mindset? Do you think about a
Right.
product being for everyone? That was one of the biggest reasons why I've been staying at Microsoft is their DNI focused as well of saying, and in terms of accessibility of not only needing that for the team but also needing that inside a product. So you'll see like
Right.
our products have a really big accessibility focus as well of,
Got it.
hey, if there's somebody with some type of disability, we should be able to support them as well, and they should be able to use
Right.
your product no matter what. So I
Right.
really like
Okay.
that aspect at Microsoft.
All right. Well, that cuts it for our 30 minutes. I really appreciate you for hopping on with me and, telling people more about you. I hope we can get a part two sometime soon, maybe in like a couple of months where I can see, some of your progress and some of your updates. But anything last thing you want to say to the audience before we log out?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me today. Looking forward to talking with you again and everything. It's yeah, always a great talk with you, Honorable.
Yeah. And also, just a shameless plug this out here. So like whenever I'm doing anything software related for my company FaceTime, Devin is the guy that I ask first. I come to him, I ask him some questions about software development, really about anything related to engineering. So, I really appreciate you for, not only hopping on this podcast, but really being able to be a resource in other areas as well.
And yeah, willing to help you regardless. Always here for you, bro.
All right. Peace.
Yeah. See ya.